talking without an agenda for action. It's almost like watching a movie. So it's an entertainment process. So therefore, what I'm going to do today is I will briefly share with you what I know about the significance of girls' education in development and make a reference to Africa and Nigeria. And then secondly, I will share with you what we've been doing over the last 2 years around that in a more intense and focused way around the movements that I'm leading around keeping girls in school in Africa. And then finally, I'll urge you to have an introspection around what's your role. And actually, I will also ask for a commitment, a personal commitment that you may choose to share or not share. Because ultimately, I personally believe that with every knowledge comes a burden of what you do with it. So I will, I'm not a .com person, but I'll try and do something. I'll try and share my my screen with you guys and see if I know how to do that. I think I do. So I'll give it a shot. Okay, I have so that we can go through as much as possible.
Perfect.
Okay, so oops. Just give me a minute. I'm sharing my screen.
Perfect.
Share screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So I'm going to go up to the first slide. So just as an overview, across the world, about 30 million girls of primary school age are not in school. In addition, there are also 34 million that are missing from just junior secondary school. And in sub-Saharan Africa, total of about 75% of all girls complete secondary school. We're not talking about university, and you would see the significance of secondary school as we go down the discussion. 49 million girls are out of school in sub-Saharan Africa, and 31 million will never make it to secondary school, actually. And studies across the world has shown that the significance of education of girls actually is much, much higher than that of boys. In the next slide, coming back to Nigeria, look at the zones, the zonal distribution. A lot of times, particularly people from the north, we quite a lot of time play actually victims. We say we're marginalized. The Southwest is taking everything. We're marginalized. We're not given positions. Everything. Everybody is at fault except us. Now, the truth is that a lot of these reflections of the level of development, you've heard, I'm sure, that Southwest Nigeria is equivalent, the economy is equivalent to that of South Korea, while that of Nigeria, Northern Nigeria, is probably one of the worst in the world. It's simply a manifestation of education and economic empowerment. And there's a very strong correlation between education and economic empowerment, and particularly education of girls. Because while education significantly affects economic development with girls, education not only does that, it affects maternal mortality, child mortality. In fact, whether your child lives or not depends on your level of education, whether you immunize your children, whether your family goes to hospital when they're sick or not. So look at this data, and I'll share with you the slides so that you can look at it at your own leisure. Now, in Nigeria specifically, there are over 5.5 million girls that are out of school. That was in 2014. As of 2018, the numbers have actually increased. 40% of women and 28% of men have never attended school. And nearly yes, can you?
Would you mind putting it in presentation mode? So just for ease of viewing for everyone, I'm getting a few comments.
Okay, so is that good?
Perfect. Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
good. Okay, so I do have then some knowledge of how to navigate my computer. Okay, so nearly 2/3 of women in the Northwest and Northeast region have never been to school, compared to less than 15% in the South. And the net enrollment for just even primary school is 56% for girls and 61% for boys. Dropout rates are highest at the 6th grade of primary school and higher amongst girls than boys. And dropout rates are also high immediately after completion of junior secondary school. So these are all data that we can all refer to. Now, the percentage of girls who drop out of school from basic school is extremely high. Approximately 28% of girls, in fact, in Nigeria, are married between the ages of 15 and 19. In some communities around Zaria, around Sokoto, you find that about 70% of girls are married between the ages of 15 and 19. And for me as a gynecologist, we know that all the complications, or most of the complications that you see that contributes to maternal and child health, or maternal child mortality, occur in mothers between the ages, mothers less than age 19. And so therefore, because of the way the nature has made us humans, girls continue to grow up to the age of 19. Their pelvises continue to grow. They're still in the process of manufacturing. So no wonder when they try to manufacture a child, it comes along with many, many complications. And if girls below the age of 19 and women over the age of 40 will just choose not to have children, to be outside the reproductive circle, you'll find that the maternal mortality of women in northern Nigeria will drop by about a third with even doing nothing, because those categories of women and girls have no business in reproduction. 23% of girls are already mothers by the age of 15 to 19 years of age. Therefore, what we found is that improving girls' education can lead to large changes, the empowerment of women, and can give major effects on economic and social development, and above all, a simple economic effect, a life savings impact. What has been found is that each year of junior or secondary education is associated with lowering the risk of being married before the age of 18 by about 6 percentage point on average. Now, each year of secondary school education, each year of secondary school education reduces the likelihood of marriage before the age of 18 in about 5 percentage points. And completion of secondary school allows a girl to mature before she embarks on reproduction, thus reducing maternal and child mortality. Women that have secondary education have higher rates of attending antenatal care, facility delivery, immunizing their children, and seeking medical care for their families when they're sick, and they use family planning and take more informed decisions around life. If you like, they're better even partners for their husbands, and their friends and better friends to their friends. Completion of primary school unfortunately has no statistically significant impact on either maternal health or child health, antenatal care, ability to take informed decision. Completion of primary school has no significant impact. And we know that for sure that a child born to a mother who can read and write is 50% more likely to survive past the age of 5 years than a child that's born to a woman who has not gone to school. And also an educated woman does better financially in improving the chances of her financial independence, and also 1 extra year of school. So for each 1 additional year of school a girl has, it increases her economic earning capacity by 10%. Now, so what have we been doing in trying to forestall this? Fatima, is that your name, Fatima?
Yes, my name is Fatima.
Okay, Fatima did mention in my introduction that I've spent quite a number of quite significant part of my life trying to promote girls' education. And my interest in girls' education stemmed from my work as an obstetrician gynecologist at Ahmadu Bello University Teaching Hospital Zaria, where I was a resident doing my postgraduate and also teaching obstetrics and gynecology. There I encountered diseases or conditions like vesicovaginal fistulae, which is a condition where a woman continuously leaks urine from her vagina, not from her urethra, because there's a leak between the vagina and the urethra. And this becomes a chronic thing that she's always smelling urine, she can't control urine, and the women or young girls, if you may, continuously either use pad or pieces of clothes to just hold the urine, and wherever they smell urine. Now, my interest on these girls went further to find out why are some of these girls getting a vesicovaginal fistula while some don't get. And the simple conclusion was that those that do get vesicovaginal fistulae are girls that usually marry very, very early, before the age of 15. They're pregnant before the age of 15. By nature, they are stunted because they're coming from a poor family background where the mother is not educated. So they grow up short for their status because they did not have the necessary vitamins, because the parents did not know how to feed them properly. The mother rather does not know how to feed them properly. Even with the same level of economic status, girls that had mothers with completion of secondary school did much better. So therefore, I started working on girls' education, and increasingly, I find that, and now that I'm older, I see a lot of my friends that I grew up together. I am who I am and they are who they are. And the only significant difference between my life and their life, other than the grace of Allah, is the fact that their parents did not see the need for them to go to school and mine did. And by my parents taking the stake to make sure I had an education, I am who I am. And so therefore, we went out, Hajab Likisu, Yusuf and I, of blessed memory, started Girl Child Concerns, trying to get girls from underprivileged communities to at least complete secondary school. And we had been doing this for now about 25 years. And we later registered it as a charity. And very interesting, some of the first two girls, one is a lecturer and the other is a pharmacist. Now, about a year ago, we decided that, you know what, this is a very chronic problem in Africa, so we need to take it up to scale. So with the support of the Sultan of Sokoto, the Kabaka of Buganda, and the Ashanti Hene of Ghana, of course, deep commitment and lead by the former Emir of Kano, Muhammad Sunusi, we brought together the Sultan and the Kabaka brought together African traditional religious leaders, youth and women leaders for a conference to discuss the importance of keeping girls in school, to find solutions from within the rich and diverse cultures and values of the people of Africa. The objective of the conference was to bring together influential traditional religious and youth leaders from across Africa to discuss the importance of African solutions to keeping girls in school to complete 12 years of education and have livelihood skills. Because we realize that poverty is real. And the way the education system are set, girls finish secondary school with no skills. So in this movement, what we're trying to do is to get as many girls from within Africa complete secondary school, and in the process they learn a skill, so that by the time they finish secondary school, they are indeed skillful, either as tailors or phone repairers or computer programmers or coders. I mean, something that's livelihood that is market relevant, not all this food and nutrition and cooking and sewing and stitching sweaters. The conference provided an opportunity for leaders to share ideas and best practices, articulate and develop strategies and network that they plan to use to promote keeping girls in school in Africa. And the whole idea was to get African traditional leaders, African youth, African women to come together and make a commitment on what they can do for themselves, not funded by donors, what they can do for themselves, each person in their individual niche, each person within their own circumstance, just to make sure that nobody is just staying doing nothing. because we believe that if each one of us can do something, we will certainly come together and change not only the future of Nigeria in terms of development, but also the future of Africa in terms of uh, uh, in terms of development. So within that conference of African traditional leaders, there was a sub-conference of youth. There was a youth workshop where youth from across Africa that were brought together by the Sultan of Sokoto, the Kabaka of Buganda, and actually with strong leadership from the former Emir of Kano, Muhammadu Sanusi, and Amina Mohammed, and the UN Deputy Secretary General, the young people from across Africa made a commitment to actively partner with Keeping Girls in School in Africa with traditional and religious leaders and women groups, lead social media campaigns for Keeping Girls in School, mobilize youth networks in support of Keeping Girls in School, and sensitize and mobilize communities to ensure girls complete secondary education and learn life and livelihood skills. And they take individual responsibilities to mentor other young people, boys and girls in their communities to ensure completion of secondary education and that they learn life and livelihood skills. And that also they will advocate to governments to invest in girls' education and they will hold government accountable. And I'm bringing the commitment that were made by African young people because I know a lot of you in this platform are young. And I also, my interaction has also taught me that a lot of times we do take things very, very seriously. Young people take things more seriously than us adults, and you make a commitment. But the commitment a lot of time ends in talking about these things, tweeting about these things, discussing in social media, forming platforms like the ones we have and discussing about it. What I'm saying is that in order for us to impact and make significant difference, we need to act on those things. And action doesn't mean you have to have money, or it doesn't have to be you have to be an adult, or you have to have a job. Action means doing something about it. And doing something could be as simple as mentoring a child on your street. There might be a woman who is selling granite or kosai or frying yam on the street, and you notice that her children are helping her do the work. What you might be able to do, because you don't have money, you don't have anything, is perhaps take time off, sit with this woman, and explain to her why it is significant. And a lot of this, every woman you see wants her child to be better than her, to succeed and be much better than her. Show her that if her child goes to school, she would be able to have the next Buhari or the next Nasru El-Rufai or the next Zulum. And once they get that, they'll do everything they can to support their children. And excuse of I don't have money is no excuse, because usually when you have the will, you find the way. So therefore, we all don't need money, and we might just be organizing on our street. We have influential people, we organize them. Some of our fathers are retired, some of our mothers are retired. Instead of staying at home and sometimes quarreling with each other or looking at each other doing nothing, encourage them to step out, go into the community primary school, and give talk to the children during assembly. If one of them is good in English, teach them English, tell them your story, encourage them, give them a reason to hope. Some of you that are outside, especially the girls, I always challenge the girls. We do buy makeup, $50 in a year, $100 in a year. Just step down a bit, do 30 and save 20, or if you're spending 250, just save 50 and help sponsor a child in school that is not your relation, a child that is anonymous, that you absolutely do not know. Because for those that are your relations, those are your obligations between you and Allah. But these ones are things that you choose to do because it's the right thing to do. And I took time to actually explain these things to you, and I want to dedicate most of my time to actually questions, because I know that whatever we adults intend to do to help the future, it's useless without you. Nothing without youth is for the youth. So therefore, you need to have something concrete to be able to do. There's need for young people to take responsibility and promote dialogue between young people and traditional and religious leaders and come up with joint recommendations on the most effective strategies for keeping girls school in your communities. And in this, I'll stop a bit to mention a key thing that when young people work with traditional and religious leaders, we must all observe. I observe that, and anybody that is successful in working with institutions has to observe that, and that is respect. We have to show respect. A lot of times we think we know, and this is something that comes with Western education. It comes with some arrogance. We think because we know, everybody else doesn't know. Because somebody doesn't speak English, we think they're idiots. They are not. They're probably much smarter than us. And who says English? The smartest people in China don't know a word in English. The smartest people in Japan don't know a word of English. So showing respect, working, being subservient to the goal of what you want to achieve, service to humanity and service to your community. You also, on the flip side, also hold governments accountable to provide the infrastructure, schools, qualified teachers, and also during holiday when you're in summer school, when you're not in school, when you're back home, organize training of teachers. You get a lot of online uh, curriculum. Retrain teachers, teach them how to speak English better, teach them how to teach young people better. And young people also, I think, need to understand and own the agenda for keeping girls in school in Africa. You need to elevate the discussion, be the leaders in the movement, and form partnerships and alliances with everybody. And this is crucial because, you know what? Some of us have passed 50. We don't have 50 years to go. If we spend another 50 years, we'll be almost like vegetables, being utterly only semi-useful. But for those of you that are young, your life has not yet started. And so therefore, you are, by doing this, by mentoring, by supporting girls in school, by supporting boys in school, by ensuring that every citizen of the future is educated, you're actually easing life for yourselves. Because otherwise, if you have a big chunk of your relations, of people around you are not educated, you will not be able to breathe. You will have a lot of burden. And above all, you're going to have a large number of people who will not be smart, and therefore you will take your responsibility and their responsibility. And above all, you will have things worse than Boko Haram, because those people will not let you be. And those people will make your life miserable. So educated young people on the need to understand the individual responsibilities that you have, including educating communities, mentoring young boys and girls to enroll and complete secondary school and share experiences. And here I will also want to put a word of caution. When you do these kinds of work, it's not about I am doing this is my organization, this is it. It's about sowing the seed, share the idea, let anybody do it, let the credit go to anybody. For all you care, all you know is you've done the right thing, and perhaps that inner satisfaction of doing the right thing and not necessarily taking the credit of it might be the only thing you may have actually. I am a big believer in a God that you may have actually on the last day when you're called to account. So therefore, I feel that this agenda is important. It's not about Africa will be great. Africa will be great. But you know what? Africa will actually not be great if 50% of Africans are uneducated. If 50% of Africans don't know what to do, they don't have a livelihood. So the rhetoric is like Nigeria is great. We now know more than anybody that just really not that great. Yes, we have a population, but a population of what? So we need to move from rhetoric to reality. And therefore, so for me, all the 6 pillars I mentioned are important and they need to come together in the movement. You have to talk about it. You have to support and work together with traditional and religious leaders. And the reason I say traditional and religious leaders is because the communities you're trying to influence, those people who don't like to take their children to school, those communities who are, if you like, uneducated in a Western way, they don't trust government, they don't trust politicians, they don't trust the law, they don't know what a policy is. Their policy is their religious leaders, and their government is their traditional leaders. When the Salki says this, they do it. When a politician says that, they say, this guy's an idiot. He wants to use us to get money. So, and we have ample experiences. I remember a couple of years ago when I was head of Gates Foundation, we had a community in Kano that for years we could not get them to vaccinate their children. And they were making polio not to go out of Kano. And they were infecting children, and children were becoming paralyzed as a result of their non-compliance. And some of them have been jailed. Some of them, the governor has done everything he could. When we reported to Sarki Sanusi, Muhammad Sanusi II, he took his car and went to that community, and he said, your Sarki has come today, and your Sarki will demonstrate to you what the polio vaccine does. He opened a vial in that community of polio vaccine that's meant for like 10 kids, and he emptied the whole bottle in his mouth. And he said, this is me. I want my children in your community to be vaccinated. All the children in that community were brought out to be vaccinated. Previously, we took their member of House of Rep went, they actually threw stones and pure water on him. He ran away. The government sent commissioner, they threw them out. And this is the power of some of the traditional leaders and some of the religious leaders. And you would all remember, you might all remember, that the polio problem in Nigeria started because one religious leader came out and said polio is a lie, that the vaccine was meant to reduce fertility, and that crashed down polio vaccination of children from over 80 to about 35%. So, what can Nigerian youth do to ensure keeping girls in school is sustained and is set and sustained in Nigeria's development agenda? What can you commit and do as a young person in your community to ensure all children, especially girls, complete secondary education and learn life and livelihood skills to contribute to the development of their community and the country? I think you should join the Keeping Girls in School online commitment. And if you don't want to join, please do something. Just do what you want to do. Start engaging your network on Keeping Girls in School in Nigeria. Start activities in your communities. Engage your religious leaders, traditional leaders, youth and women groups. Join the online movements march, which takes place annually. I mean 2020. I meant 2020. And they be the ones that will define the future of Nigeria and Africa and shape the position of Africa in the world. Importantly, stay focused and be exemplary African leaders, because the future of Africa and Nigeria is in the young. And my prayer is that as we finish this, as we discuss this today, this day will be something that we will remember, because I personally believe that on the day of judgment, God is going to ask us what we do with the knowledge we've learned today. I thank you very much, and I'll use the rest of the time for the discussion.
Thank you.
Over to you, Fatima.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mandara. It was really good to hear that. And I think above all, the key takeaway is we can sit here and talk all day if we want, but the key thing to pull out of this is the actions we need to take to move things forward and use the knowledge we've learned. So those are really interesting points. And I can see the key points that we can do: mentoring young people, working with traditional leaders, taking accountability to help build our community. So thank you very much for that. So now we'll move on to a few questions. I see, if you have any questions, please put your hand up on the chat and I will let you have the floor. So our first question, I see a question from Muhammad Bukar Umara, but before we go into that, I see a few key people in our audience that I want to acknowledge and see if they have anything to add to this. The first person I see here is Dr. Garba Abari. It's an honor to have you here in our audience. Is there anything you want to add to this?
No, let's take the questions first.
All right.
Let's take the questions.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we see one from Muhammad Bukar Umara. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Fatima. Thank you very much, Dr. Mairo Mandara, for the wonderful presentation. It couldn't have come at a better time, I think. This is the time we need to reflect on issues that have to do with girls' child education and in general out-of-school children in Nigeria and in northern Nigeria. So my question is, I have seen a lot of these kind of conversations happen. People talk about how we can do what we can do, but I think we have. I don't want to be pessimistic, but I think it's like we have reached a peak whereby we need some strict policies and some strict rules and regulations that have to work in Nigeria. I want you to like shed more light on maybe girls' child's concern and your own engagement on girls' child education and all that. Whether you have in any way tried to push for maybe laws on parents who refuse to send their children to school, especially girls' child, or parents who force their children into marriage when they are not yet ripe for marriage, when they are not yet done for school, when they are not even up to the age of marriage, because we can see people getting married, young girls getting married at the age of 13 without education, without any exposure of even being a mother, when they themselves are like children, then they are being forced to raise other children, which is a very, very terrific experience for them. So I think that's my question for Dr. Mairo Mandara.
Thank you.
Fatima, do you want me to answer one question at a time?
Yes, we'll do it that way.
Okay, good. Okay, so thank you very much, Muhammad. Yes, thank you. The Girl Child Concerns is an organization that a few of us formed a couple of years ago, and it's a registered nonprofit in Nigeria. And the objective is to ensure children get education, quality education, particularly girls, regardless of their financial status. And basically what we do is we go to communities where there's lowest girls enrollment in northern Nigeria, go to primary school, recruit girls that are doing well, girls and basically girls that have an ambition. When I grow up, I want to be this, I want to be that. And we take them up, give them scholarship, put them through school, and pay their school fees until they finish secondary school. We also we do have criteria for that. So one, you need to be girls. You have to be above average performance in primary school, because we do not have all the money. We have to therefore select only a cohort. We also have to have a commitment of the parents. We usually bond the parents. They can't take them out of secondary school before they complete. And we also have a commitment of the children. Every girl that is on a scholarship also is committed to mentor 5 other children. So you'll be surprised that our 10-year-old children, girls, and 11-year-old girls are also mentor children that are 5 and 6 and 7. So that sense of you are getting, you must give back is inculcated in these girls. And when we started, some of the girls we have, as I said earlier, we have one that's a pharmacist, one is a lecturer. We also have 2 working in GCC. At the moment, from the graduates from last year, one is a of medical student at the University of Maiduguri. We have 4 in the University of Notre Dame in the US. But to the important issue you raised, Mohammed, around policy, policies in Nigeria, for example, Kaduna State had, God knows, maybe over 20 years. We pushed for policy around ensuring that every girl must finish secondary school and no parent has a right to remove her. But until the time of Nasru, it was never enforced. So now we're having that enforced because we have a friendly governor. And the key to this is that some of you honestly have to go into politics. You can't sit on the line. If you need to make change, you have to be the change maker. You can't be begging anybody. Some of you need to just drop your Turanchi and go and rub and work on the boots and be politicians and campaign. And in Borno, we have the girls themselves. We have girls in secondary school campaigning to the governor around making that policy. In Borno also, they've always had a policy that no parent can remove their child from school. So now is the girls that are on the governor trying to make sure that that policy is activated. And Muhammad, because I know you're in Maiduguri, I will challenge that you actually support, because these girls are secondary school, that you take up that mantle and I'll be your support. And you work with the girls to make sure that these things happen. Policies are important, but implementation of policies a totally different ballgame. And this is where citizens can insist on making things done. But even without policy, traditional and religious leaders can make it work. So we need to do all.
Thank you very much. That was a really good point about us obviously taking responsibility and pushing to get things through. As you said, we can sit and do all the turanchi, but if we just sit there, there's nothing that will be done. So next we have a question from Lady Fatima Askari. I'm sorry, I put this name wrong.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. This is quite insightful. And a quick one. I wanted to, I'm not sure if that is still valid, that we are practicing a kind of free education here in Nigeria. And then most of the issues around girls' education that I've seen within communities is that some of the girls are really willing to go back to school, and the parents also have consented. But unfortunately, talking about scholastic materials, uniforms, and other basic materials the girls would need to access these schools are some of the primary issues. I want to know how or what is the position of the government in supporting the provision of some of these materials. Is it part of the free education package or otherwise one? Then secondly, I would also want you to please give us a little tips on how you think or what best method you think we as young people or different bodies can engage the government on advocacy, constant advocacy around these issues of girl child education, and what you think has worked for you through the years of your work that we can really access and make a push to the government to ensure that some of these policies are enacted or the free education is actually working in favor of also the girl child. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatima. Lots of you find a lot poverty. So as I said earlier, poverty is real. It's really an issue, and that's why we believe that ensuring that there's market relevant inclusion of market relevant livelihood skills is essential. If parents would see the value of girls' education, and then the girls will begin to take things for themselves as well. So in terms of free education, generally basic education, that's up to JS3, is free. Senior secondary school is not that free. But in Borno State, what we're doing is we're redefining our own understanding of basic education. So in Borno, we're now working with we have actually we're in the final stages of Borno State 25-year development framework and a 10-year costed implementation plan, which will be our transformative agenda. In that, we're making our basic education to be completion of secondary school. So if you don't even have secondary school certificate in Borno, you haven't started. We'll classify you as illiterate or not being literate. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to dramatize. But we're making basic education to be completion of secondary school. And with that, materials will be added, will be free. But the truth is that when government says materials will be free, especially with the current fiscal challenge Nigeria is facing, it's not going to be true because there's simply just no money to buy it. But one thing I do know is that once parents understand the significance, they do everything to provide. And I'm saying this because I know even without government, we need to move away from the total dependence on government. You will find that the poorest woman, when her daughter is getting married, she manages to buy 12 sets of Samira. She manages to buy Leda. She manages to buy Gado. She manages to even buy Kwalla and all those things. It's value. We need to have value reorientation. What is important and what is not important. We can go and talk to government. Government will say, I will do it. But what I know for sure is that in Nigeria, with the current fiscal status, anything you ask government to do, they will say yes. Will they be able to do it? No, they will not be able to do it. So, but the bottom line is we must not give government an excuse. I'm telling you this so that you can calibrate what you're asking. When you go to the government, demand for it, but know that you succeed 20 or 30%. The rest of the 70% people have to take responsibility for their lives Because when the chips are down, it is their lives. These government people will come and go, but your life will always be your life. Your family will always be your family. And we need to recalibrate. Fatima Askira, I happen to know that you work in Borno. In Borno, people need to calibrate. You find even the poorest woman will still buy a 25,000 naira or 15,000 lafaya to wear and go for a wedding. We need to change the social orientation of our people to know that if she invests that 25,000, her daughter will not only buy another lafaya for her, she will take her for Hajj in future, and she will buy a new Samira for her in her own house. Some of the things I have learned in working with communities to get them to think differently and to actually act is, and I'll tell you a story of something I did in Zaria, in some villages. When we went for meetings, I went from Abuja for a meeting in Zaria. I went with the driver, but when we reached near the place, I took the wheel and I drove myself in my car. And I went and I parked close to the place, and I came out and they saw this woman, and I wore their kind of hijab. I don't ordinarily use the penguin hijab, but I wore that hijab and went and came out, and we spoke and everything. And it's like, okay. And I said, this is my car. And I said, it's because my parents saw the need. And you know what? Your daughter, when she's educated, she'll buy Samira for you. She will. And I told the father, she may change the roof of your house. And if she's very lucky, she might take you for Hajj. She might take you to Jerusalem. They sat up. They could see, they could link the future of their children with their quality of their own lives. So we need to find some of these ingenious ways of doing. And all I'm saying is hold government accountable, make sure they do the right thing, but don't put all of your eggs on government.
Absolutely. And again, the key point here is definitely that value orientation and understanding that when you invest now in your child's education, the value you will reap later is manyfold. Thank you very much for that. So we have a question from someone with the phone called Redmi. I'm going to unmute your phone.
Okay, thank you, Fatima. Good afternoon. First, I would want to say a big thank you to Dr. Mairo Mandara for what she's done. I personally have been fortunate to work with her in the past, either at GCC or while she was at BMGF. We did a couple of projects together. My name is Mohammed Lawal, and I know how much she's done and how committed she is to the issue of girls' child education. Particularly in Arewa and what we've been able to do in the Northeast and all of that. Now, my question or the comment I want to make is this. It's on the issue of stakeholder engagement in terms of how we can achieve this value orientation that she mentioned. Because she did mention a bit of it when she talked about the Angwa becoming the lead in terms of the push for polio vaccination. But I don't know if Doctor can really go ahead and discuss a little more around the stakeholder engagement that is required for this value orientation, because I believe that the youth as a group cannot do it alone. The government is only a single stakeholder. And then, of course, the NGOs and whoever is working, we can just do as much as we can do as a single group. But how does it work when you bring the entire stakeholders together to be able to achieve value orientation? Because it's very critical in terms of getting this change regarding girls' education. Thank you.
Thank you very much. In creating value reorientation, I think there are certain steps that are crucial and certain principles we need to appreciate. The first is everything has to be about the people we're trying to influence. And the people we're trying to influence in this are people who make decisions on behalf of girls and boys to go to school. So the most important people in the discussion around education is not Mairo Mandara, it's not NGOs, it's not government, it's not anybody. And it's not even actually the girls and boys themselves, it's actually the caregivers. because the girls don't decide whether they want to go to school or not. The decision is made by their parents, and the decision is made by their caregivers. So the most significant people that we're trying to influence are these caregivers, the parents and the people who are responsible for this. The second denominator is what do they care about? What is important for them? Why should they leave what they're doing and do what you think is good for them? And then why should they trust you in the first place? So these are things we need to disaggregate and understand. If you look at, say, for example, a typical northern Nigerian village, what are their values? Even the poorest poor, even the most uneducated, they have certain values. They have values about mutinchi. They call, I don't know what mutinchi is called in English. Fatima, support me.
Dignity?
Dignity. Their dignity, their dignity, the family dignity, their family name. They care about Al-Jannah. When they die, are they going to heaven or they're going to go to hell? They care about Sunansu, their name in the society. These are the things that are important for them. Actually, most of them, now there's been a lot of change, encroachment around money. Money was never a value in our communities. Now it is important. So we also put it in that gamut. Now, if these are the things that are important for them, how do you, who are the influencers of all these? If you go to a typical, a Kano is an extreme, but if we can use Kano as an example, what do these communities think about? Who is, so you have this idea that we all know scientifically data has proven the value of education and everything. But the messenger is perhaps more important than the message in this stage, because the messenger has to be the one that has the key to opening their minds for them to pop up and say, okay, yes, we'll listen to you because we trust you. So this is where the people they trust is very important. It could be their traditional leader. It could be their religious leaders. It could even be a politician that has shown empathy. It could be a young person in that community that is very, very respectful. They see him when they're doing something, he comes and helps. Somebody's carrying leather bag, he takes it with for them. He kneels down to greet them. So it has to be based on trust. Now, when you have to, so there's a lot of thinking that has to take place. But above all, you have to have allies. So you have to have allies in these people they trust. You have to have allies in their sarakuna, you have to have allies in their dekatei, you have to have allies in the traditional leaders. And the second thing is, why will the traditional leaders trust you? Why will the religious leaders trust you? And this is where your knowledge and this is where your education pays off. You need to flip the discussion about your theory to their theory. If you're talking with religious leaders, what does Islam say about education? If you're talking about tradition, what does the value say about education? So from now on, once you have allies, you now flip all the discussion to what is their value proposition and what is important to them. And so therefore the discussion is now centered around them. And at that stage, you might actually be the least important person because you then become a facilitator either on the scene or behind the scene. And honestly, my experience shows that you have to be willing to not take the credit and let them own it and let them be for themselves. And this is, I saw this vividly in the conference we had on traditional leaders and religious leaders. It was our ideas, we brought it together, but how can I bring, I mean, it's impossible. I cannot bring 250 traditional religious leaders, the Kabaka of Buganda, Ashanti of Hene, but the Sultan did. When the Sultan got the idea, he owned it. I was a messenger. They were just asking me, Meroza and Sharua, and I'll bend down and I say, and I pour a bottle of water, close it, and I became an errand girl. It got going. And so therefore, so we need to get all of these elements. But for us who want to imbibe, who want to go on this journey, we need to work on ourselves. and actually train ourselves to be able to have the joy and counting the numbers of successes, even when we are not acknowledged, because a lot of times we will not be acknowledged, but then the work will be done. And that for me is that. So there's a lot of mapping, a lot of thinking, and also, so let me tell you, when I talk to traditional and religious, when I talk to religious leaders around girls, I ask simple questions. So what does Islam say about education? And they bring it and they're very happy. And then what about girls' education? And how do we move this agenda forward? And you'll be surprised. I'll tell you this story that's very funny. One religious leader I was speaking with, he was like, but I could see he's saying, so why should I go into this? What is it in it for me? And I realized that, you know what, he's not, although he knew the truth, but he was not enthusiastic. And he's a very influential religious leader. And something came to me and I said, okay, Allah, thank you. And I said to him, you know what? You know, the world is going. Nigeria is moving. Your community of Muslims are going to be the most backward. And in this country, Nigeria, your own community are going to be the ones that are cutting nails, that are wheelbarrow people, that are frying osei, when all other communities will be doctors, will be teachers. He said, eh? And I said, yes. And this will be your community. Yours will be Al-Majid. He said, no, it can't be. I said, yes, it can be until you do something. And that spurred him. And one pastor that I was speaking with, I told him that, you know what, if your girls and boys go to school, the congregational tithe you'll get, instead of them dropping 1 naira, 10 naira in the congregational tithe in the church every Sunday, they'll be so educated that they'll be able to drop 10,000. And the guy's eye pop that his community will be more tight. So sadly, we all are humans. We need to see what is the value proposition that aligns with my principles for me to take something forward. So you guys as advocates have to continuously find why somebody should do that. For a politician, when I speak to a politician about girls' education, now I talk to him about the 15-year-old girls and the 14-year-old girls. By 2023 election, there will be voters. And you know what? If you vote for them, if you make them educated, you can make sure they know that you voted for them, and then they are you paid, you ensured you did the right thing. And you know what? There will be voters. These young boys and girls will be voters, and they will decide your future. Sadly, everybody is terribly selfish, and values matter. So we need to, this will take us, Muhammad, this will take us like one whole week of disentangling.
Thank you very much. But I think that was really good. Those are some really powerful words. But I think the key thing to pull out of there is about understanding the people's value, building the trust within there, and using their values to mobilize them to make the change, which is really great. I think that was a really powerful message. So next we have a question from Hafsa El Yaqub. Salam alaikum, Hafsa. You have the floor.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Salam alaikum.
Walaikum assalam. Thank you, Ma, very much. Very inspiring. So personally, as co-founder and vice president of a coding club here in ABU, I have always tried to be a girl and ladies tech advocate myself. And I've realized that there are so many girls out there that actually have the opportunity to, and they have families that support them, but they are just not interested for one reason or the other. So my question is, how do you suggest we could spark that passion and interest in them to do so much more with regards to their careers? Thank you.
I think this is very, very important, and this is something we have learned in our scholarship scheme, and that has necessitated us to incorporate into our school, into our scholarship, something like a boot camp, a annual life skills workshop, where we bring all our scholars for a week or sometimes 10 days, and we get them grounded on who they are. Now, Hafsa, what is crucial for young people is to actually have a self-definition. This is very important for every human being, and more so for girls, actually. These girls, you need to tap into, I mean, you see a lot of them, especially if they're from the north, as little as 6 years, they're putting lipsticks, they're putting eyeliners and pencil, and even when they're as dark as coal, they're putting blush because this is what they see, this is what they see as value. You need to give them a reason why. You need to let them understand, and in this boot camp where we work with young people, we train them to understand that they're primarily human beings and then secondarily females. You're first a human being with all the attributes of a human being, with the brain, with the aspirations, with everything. You're Khalifatullah if you're a Muslim. And if you're a Christian, you're created in the image of God. And so therefore, you are on this earth for a purpose. And when you go back to your creator, you're going to go back with no husband, with no child. And it doesn't matter what you are, and you're going to account for every single minute of your life. So grounding them. For young girls, you need to go slowly with this grounding. The bigger grounding that these young girls do understand is actually a big aspiration. If you really work hard and study, one of the big things that I find they giggle over is that, you know what, you've got to choose your own husband. You've got to choose your own husband. You can actually have a car that is yours. You would have you will be a teacher, and if they have a teacher they admire, you're going to be like teacher this, and so on and so forth. So again, tapping into their values, you would be going back to these value things over and over and over again.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we'll let Shoaib there take the floor for now. He has a question. Shoaib?
Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you very much, and nice to have you here. And thank you, Doctor, for this wonderful presentation. Like, serious, when we talk of reorientation in Nigeria, I think it all goes back to our moral values, and this has to start really from upbringing home. And the need for girls education is quite very important. Doctor, my question is straightforward. Like, I realize that it has been a long time that this movement has been moving. But you talk of precisely 3 states in the northern part, Kano, Kaduna, and Nigeria. My question is, how far in the other northern part of Nigeria do you have a kind of an branches in other states? Do you have them? And then the secondly is that there are a lot of people that are willing to participate and to advocate for this kind of change. I spent most of my life in Borno State, but I came from Yobe State. So in Potoskum, like, there was a lot of girls that are not in school, and some of them is not that they are not willing to, or they don't have actually the finance to finance some of their children, but actually the mentality is already there that they don't see like that kind of importance, or how are they going to go about it. And also there are some youth that are willing to advocate, but actually the piloted project of how to go about it, they really don't have it. So I don't know if really you have a kind of manifesto or something like that it will be a kind of a plan that this youth or those advocates can use in terms of advocating, in terms of their local society, some business or some rural leaders that really wish to share with them when they are willing to advocate for this. Thank you very much.
Uh, 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 Thank you. I think what you need is, if you're interested in doing something around this, is perhaps join the community of keeping girls in school, and learn from others that are doing similar work. I'm trying to pull the slide that gave you the links to some of these areas, but oops, sorry.
I can hear.
You can check our website around girl child concerns, or you could also check the website of Keeping Girls in School Africa. You can follow the discussion on Twitter and the rest of them. I only do the tweets. I don't know how to do Instagram and all the other ones. And get a community. And what is important is get a community. Just get one or two friends and start doing something. You don't have to do something big. Are you now currently in Yobe, or where are you? Shaibu, where are you now? Where are you based?
Shaibu?
Shaibu is muted. Shaibu, where are you based now?
So I unmuted you, Shaibu.
So if I assume Shaibu now lives in Damaturu, my suggestion would be get a few friends, not a big deal, 2-3 friends, have a discussion, go and meet.
Actually, yeah, I'm in this man.
Where are you? Where are you based now, Shaibu?
Yeah, I live in Algeria.
In Algeria, beautiful. And this is
Yeah.
a good time in Algeria, Ramadan. So you
Yes.
have lots of people who want to do great things. So talk to a few friends and see how much money you can save from scholarship from your friends in Algeria, and then get a few people and join this movement. You'll get other young people that will support you, and you could start in your own village. Give a call, make a call your local imam, get a friend from there who has a phone, go discuss with your local imam. Look, you're very concerned about this girls' education, or boys and girls. In Yobe is both boys and girls. That is happening. What can we do about it? Have a discussion. Influence 1 or 2 malams that are doing tafsir. There are many. Let them include it in their tafsir in 2020. This Ramadan. It will take time. It takes time, but you will be able to do it. If you want to register an NGO and this is time for action. You don't have time for that. You just need to get going. And please, you follow that community and you'll learn a lot. And I'm sure also there was Askira who asked a question. She also does quite a bit of work, and she's a lot on Twitter talking about this things. Also follow her.
Thank you very much for that. And I guess, again, driving home that message of partnership and the importance of partnership and working together to try to aid with this kind of topics. So next we have a question from Hawa Abdullahi. Hawa, you have the floor.
Fatima, we also need contributions, not just questions.
Okay. Oh, we'll get to contributions after Hawa, and we'll start talking contributions. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. So I'm Hawa. Thank you for talking with us, Doctor. And I feel some of the points and issues you've raised, we are all aware of it, but then it just gives us a bit of perspective, seeing the numbers and the matrices and the measurements. It actually helps us understand what we're dealing with. My question is actually centered around your scholarship initiative. So the goal and the objective is actually for social mobility, to get people that cannot afford it go further in their education. So what measures are you currently putting in place to ensure that the beneficiaries of some of those schemes are actually people that can't afford it, not people that can afford it and are willing to actually go further? Yeah, that's my question.
So Hawa, thank you very much. In GCC, we have a very rigorous way of selection. By the way, the money, how we raise the money, we raise the money from among ourselves, from my friends. My friends know me. I terrorize each one of them to give me the equivalent of money for one lace or so annually, and or one super Hollandies and stuff. So we raise the money within ourselves with our families and our friends. And what we do have staff who are dedicated, working full time on this, and these staff go around villages. So, for example, right now we have screened about 275 students. All of them are girls internally displaced by Boko Haram. They all living in IDP camps around Borno State. And all of these girls, we're taking them to school, and we're going to stick with them until they finish senior secondary school. Some of them cannot even read or write, and they're 10 and 11. So we're starting a crash program, a 1-year foundation program, where they will, which is IT based, and they will learn to read and write in 9 months, and then they will then go into the secondary school curriculum. So we're starting a girls' academy in Maiduguri. It's a high-end school, kind of poshy looking, but we're taking every single girl from IDP camp, trying to give her a different life and a taste of what it's like to be educated. How we do it, let me give you just a few steps. First, before we try to do at least about 100 girls every year. This year, new girls. This year we're starting with 375 in our school and some others. So we will be doing about 500 this year, new girls. We go to our Education Resource Center to get the education statistics of the state. And we select the areas that have the least girls going to secondary school. We go to the primary schools in the villages and we see where are the girls that are in primary school. We study, our staff study the school record to see who are the girls that are the top 10 or so in each of those schools. We then bring them and we do exams for them. The exams are very basic, A, B, C, D, 2-letter words, 4-letter words, sentences, but we have a very rigorous oral exam for every girl where we ask her what's her aspiration, and we look at her eyes. Does she really want something? Does she have a potential? Because our monies are limited, so we have to make sure that our monies are, and because they are our money, our hard-earned money from our salaries, we don't joke with them. So we make sure that we only select the girls that are there. Once we do that, we then go to the to whoever are the elders in community, and they link us up with the parents. We visit the parents' homes to see how they live, the kind of life they lead. We meet with the parents, we meet with the mothers. Once we select all the children we select, we have a meeting with the village head with these girls. And the meeting we have is a discussion meeting around what is our obligation and what is the parents' obligation. We take a commitment to sponsor the girls through secondary school. And our sponsorship is everything academic, from pencil to pen to book to school bag to exercise book to school shoe to uniform. Now we take them to boarding. It includes sanitary pad, soap, what do you call it, mattresses, bed where necessary, insecticide, anything you can think of, anything, 100%. That's our commitment. The parents have a commitment. They have to sign in front of their traditional leader with witnesses that they will, under no circumstances, take their children out of school until they finish secondary school. If they marry them, they must also finish secondary school. But if they attempt to take them out of school, they must pay us every single kobo we spend on the girl. And we bond the parents in that way. The second obligation is that they will allow their daughters to go for our annual life skills workshop, where we teach these children about life skills and livelihood skills and what they need to do to know what their humanity is. And then we get the girls to also sign that they will share whatever they learn in the boot camp with either their friends or their parents or with their siblings, and that the girls also sign and they keep a logbook that they're mentoring 5 other children. So this is our rigorous thing. And once these children are at school and in their boarding school, we have staff that visit them every month during school visit. They cook rice and they take all the things, the Fanta and whatever. You all remember when it was school visit. So they did all those kinds of school visits. And during those school visits, they also do what they call safe spaces. They sit with them around a mat, and they discuss 2 or 3 topics around menstrual hygiene, peer pressure, and how to say no to boyfriends, how to pass exam. So every month, our staff go to do that. So it's quite a very hectic process. And so with this hectic process, I don't think we can afford to give our money to any rich child.
Thank you very much for that. Some really powerful work you're doing there. It's very inspiring to hear all this effort and work and time and energy you're putting into this. It's really good to hear. Thank you for sharing. I know we're very conscious of time, starting this and ending this, so unfortunately we won't get to all the questions and contributions. But before we leave, I just wanted to see if there was any question or contribution from, we have someone, Lamin Bakoyakase here in the audience, if you had any contribution to make to this conversation.
Hello?
Hello?
My contribution is that, and it's also a question that we have to go through. I want to ask Doctor, in regard to health education. She talks about vaginal fistula and rectal vaginal fistula. Here in the northern Nigeria, this kind of problem is another problem that we are facing in the northern Nigeria, really because of early marriage. So, Doctor, my question is that, mostly it happens in the rural area. And those rural area women and girls, they didn't go to school. So I think we should find a way as a non-governmental organization to see how we will go around and educate or enlighten parents on dangers associated to early marriage. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you very much for the contribution, Lami. Yes, you're right. We need to go to rural areas and support people make informed decisions about their kids.
All right. So on that note, then, unfortunately, we won't be able to get to everyone with any questions that they have because of our time constraints. But don't forget to drop any of your questions in the chat box, and we'll try to remain in touch and connect with us at trilogy.net with anything you have, and we'll try to keep the conversation going. And as we keep emphasizing on this talk, it's important for us to talk about these topics, but beyond that, we need to start taking actions within our communities to try to make sure that we are doing something to help build our community. So thank you very much. If you have any of the links to your NGO, Dr. Mairo Mandara, if you could connect with us or drop to us, and we'll definitely share with our audience, because it will definitely be great for us to try to work with your organizations and also try to help build our own. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us on this session. Dr. Mairo Mandara, I don't know if you have anything you want to say in closing as we come to the end of this session.
Thank you very much. The one thing I want to say at the end of this session is that it's really important that we all work together, but more importantly, also mentor others. And I'll charge you all to actually share what you've learned with 5 others and make sure that together those 5 others also share with 5 others so that we have a ripple effect of the impact of what we've heard. And I'm sure you all can make a difference, and we will all be here to support you.
Thank you so much again. And stay connected, drop your comments in the chat box, and we'll continue the conversation and keep this thing moving. Thank you very much.
Thank you.